Good afternoon. Thank you to everyone tuning into our webinar on workers' compensation cost containment this afternoon. There's quite a bit of material, so we're going to get started pretty quickly. Just so you know, we will have time for questions. If you will, when you need to ask a question, please go into the Q&A box on top of your screen there and submit your questions through that. And we'll be sure to try to answer those as best as we can. And at the end of this program, there will be time for questions and answers. So we'll try to make sure that we answer every one of your questions. With that, we're going to get started, and we'll try to, again, be as interactive as possible. What is workers' compensation? Workers' compensation is no-fault statutory coverage, which means that state laws mandate that businesses have to carry workers' compensation for the health and welfare of their employees. Premiums are based on payrolls, class codes. Class code 8835 is for home health care, and class code 8810 is clerical. Now, if you're here from a nursing facility or assisted living, you may see class codes 8826 and 8824 in addition to instead of 8835. So, but very similar operations, as I'm sure you know. Employee class is always assigned to the highest rated class code unless you're able to keep separate payroll records. It's important to note that because that can cause for some, I would say, expensive audit process. So just remember that it's important to make sure that you're maintaining separate payroll records if you have separate job duties. Experience modification. We're going to talk a lot about that today. That plays a huge factor on premium. Your factor is based on your previous 3 years of lost history, and it's expressed as a ratio in relation to a payroll and the job class. So anything around one is average. Anything less than one is better than average, and anything greater than one is below average. For workers' compensation to apply, the injured worker must demonstrate the injury arose out of the course of the employment, and injury must have resulted from an unexpected event. Injury was either gradually occurring or traumatic. The injury was the result of an aggravation or acceleration of a pre-existing medical condition. Occupational diseases have the same burden of proof as physical injuries, and mental injuries with no physical injuries must be proven to a clear and convincing standard of medical evidence. So it doesn't have to just be a pure physical injury, but there still has to be the proof that it was an actual accident or injury in the course of employment. There's other costs to workers' compensation besides just the direct costs. When we think about direct costs, we think about the medical costs or the cost for the employees being out of work, what's called indemnity. But there's also the cost of unhappy patients, delays, overtime, new training, administrative time, increased insurance costs, and loss in productivity. So all those things are important, and they all have a bearing on not only the cost to the company, but also the extra workload and productivity of the organization. Hidden cost of an injury. You got to temporarily replace a worker. You got to have other workers pick up that workload. Of course, there's cost of the chatter about the incident, worker morale, and then somebody's got to complete the paperwork and make the calls, check on your injured worker. All those things take time and they all have a cost. Accidents happen for one or both of the following: unsafe acts or unsafe conditions. That is the only two things that cause workers' compensation accident injuries. And very, very few of the injuries are the result of unsafe conditions. Some are, but by and large, the majority is due to unsafe acts. What's an unsafe act? An unsafe act is like horseplay, running, drug or alcohol use, not following procedures, taking shortcuts. By far, the largest thing that happens there is taking shortcuts. It's unbelievable what you will see happen. And I've got some photographs here in a minute to explain some of that. But by far, the biggest exposure is taking shortcuts and not following procedures. We have procedures for a reason. Unauthorized use of equipment or tools, using damaged equipment, not using your personal protective equipment, not using proper body mechanics when you're doing the work or lifting. You laugh when you see some of these pictures here, but somebody had to do this for us to have these pictures. I'm not going to elaborate on them. I think they're ludicrous enough, but again, somebody did it. And here's a couple more. You wonder what goes through people's minds, but again, somebody did it. Experience mod. Your experience mod is either really 1, which is average, above 1, which is higher than average intuitively, or less than 1, which is what you're looking for. Basically, if your experience mod is 1.3, you're paying 30% more than the average than the average business in your industry for workers' compensation. If it's 0.7, you're paying 30% less than the average business in your industry. And that's really, really important. We're going to explain why in just a moment. Okay, we're going to talk about premium calculation, and this math is very basic, although I will admit to you when I was doing some of the math I did was incorrect, but it's correct now. If you have a $4 million payroll in home health care, at a $2 rate, then you're going to have an $80,000 premium. Very, very straightforward math. Now, this is why we're going through this. Now, let's say your experience mod instead of 1.0 is 1.5. That same payroll with a 1.5 experience mod, instead of being 80,000, is now 120,000. Huge difference. Conversely, if it's 0.85, then you've got a $68,000 premium. So if your mod is 1, the goal is to get it lower, and you see why now. The best part about this is you actually control the experience mod to a degree. Indemnity versus medical only. Indemnity means lost wages. Medical only bills, all the insurance companies pay medical bills. Here's the important part: 70% discount for medical only. So if there's a $10,000 claim, it's seen as $3,000. If it's $100,000, it's seen as $30,000. But that medical only discount makes a huge difference in your experience model. It should be your goal to have every claim be a medical only claim. Here it is in table format, but it says the same thing basically. You'll see at the top, medical only discount, it's $118,000 lower over a 3-year period. If you look at without the discount for medical only, it's $170,000. That same injury with the medical only discount, it's only a $52,000 increase in premium over 3 years. So it's amazing how much difference the medical only makes. How do you keep claims medical only? Number one, you've got to have a formal lot duty program. Lot duty program would basically say you've got a lot duty program that you follow, and it's like in a booklet or like a handout that you can give to the doctor that shows what your employees can do instead of their normal job, and it basically allows them to line up the work with the jobs that you have so that they can make sure that they're physically able to do the work that's available. So I would just say it's important to have a medical only, a lot duty program so you can keep claims medical only. Got to get your employee back to work in 7 days. That's in North Carolina. If it's in another state, it could be a little less or a little longer. I would say you always make sure to get the employee treated, of course, and make sure they take that lot duty form with them. The last statement on this slide: have a strategic doctor relationship so that they can be aware of what's going on. I think that's huge because that allows the doctor to collaborate with you, talk to you, and share information with you and you back to them so that there's cooperation in trying to get the employee back to work. And it's not always the case that it's rarely the case that the doctor is trying to get the employee back to work. I think you need to really, that's the most overlooked piece of this, is you need to have a strategic doctor relationship. So I can't say enough about that. Injury reporting, report to injury immediately. What's the benefit of early reporting? It really comes down to one thing, I think, because the faster the insurance company knows about it, the faster your agent knows about it, the better they can build your defense. And that's huge because a lot of claims really aren't even workers' comp to start with. And it gives them the ability to know right from the start what's going on before they've been to the doctor, before the doctor's prescribed, 2 weeks off with rest or not able to pick up more than 10 pounds. It allows them to go ahead and get a start on the claim before anything's got out of hand. And workers' compensation is one of those things that if you don't keep your hands right on it, it can grow like a snowball. Make sure all your workers' compensation claims are reported within 24 to 48 hours. Huge, major, important piece of information there. Injury investigation process. Always have an investigation. Plan for accidents before they happen. Train your workers. Provide training for your supervisors. Treat the injured worker immediately. Send them to a physician. Have your supervisor complete an investigation of events. Have the worker complete their statement. If there's any witnesses, they need to provide their statement. And you'll also do the same kind of thing when you report the claim. But it's important to gather all that data because every time there's a situation, that data does not always line up. So it's important to know as much as possible. Again, interview all witnesses, assess all the conditions, check out the condition of the floor, the equipment that's being used, personal protective equipment, the environment, weather, the processes, what actually took place. If there's any video, you want to know about that. Look for all the facts and build the entire story of what took place. Take pictures without patients in the picture. We never want patients in the picture because that lends a human element to it and doesn't let the picture speak for itself. Use a learning process to review the accident. In other words, how can you change and implement the program changes so that the learning process and the investigation gets better? And hold everyone accountable. That's a part of the investigation. Make sure that they know what they did do right and maybe what they could have done better. Benefits of immediate injury investigation. You correct hazardous conditions before somebody else gets hurt. We always hear this too when we hear about crimes or those kind of things. Recollections change and your memory begins to fade. So the faster we get that information, the better. Conditions changes. That's especially in place of employment. Things change almost every few minutes. Evidence is removed or destroyed. How soon should you start the accident investigation? Immediate. And it needs to be clear that you've done everything to mitigate the situation going forward. Post-injury follow-up. Maintain contact with your injured worker. Let them know that you care about them, that you're concerned about them. Let them know that it's important to them, that important to you that they're returned to wellness and that they return to work and you miss them. That will do two things. Everybody needs to know that you care about them. But the second thing is it reduces attorney involvement. And if you can keep the attorney out of it, generally the claims get settled quicker and usually for less cost. Require the worker to provide updates after each visit to the doctor. You need to know what's going on with that situation and how the healing process and treatment is going. You need to understand what's the prognosis and how are they progressing through the healing process with each visit to the doctor, and analyze the process to identify improvement needed areas. We always need to be trying to improve our program and our process so that we're doing a better and better job, because workers' compensation is one of the toughest things to control out there. But as long as we can keep everything to medical only, it makes a world of difference in your cost. Define your return to work tasks ahead of time. The doctor needs to understand what those tasks are, and we can help with that some, but your job jobs that you have available and work that you need to be done. But we can help a little bit with that because there's always things that you want to do, but maybe don't have time to do. And if you've got an employee that can't do their normal job, maybe they can do some of that. It frees up time for other workers. And a lot of times, especially with home care, home health care, there are clients that don't have to be lifted. They can just be companion care. So, maybe you can switch one caregiver out with another so that you've got somebody that's with a companion care case so that they're not putting themselves in a position of getting hurt worse. Be creative. I always try to keep everything medical only instead of indemnity. When I say indemnity too, there's another piece that comes to that. You want to make sure that it's medical only and that there's no settlement. If there's going to be a settlement, you can keep the person working, but if there's going to be a settlement for loss of use, it's going to still be an indemnity claim and not just medical only. It's important to note that because when the claim rolls onto your experience mod, it's going to make a bigger difference. And always make sure you have that task list and always try to update it and keep it as current as possible so that you're given the best opportunity to keep those claims to medical only status. Injured worker management. Supervisors play a huge role in the success of return to work. We can have a light duty task list, or we can have, processes in place, but if supervisors don't follow them, they're not going to work. Intuitive, right? Develop a modified duty job description. Put it in writing. Always review the restrictions with the person supervising the injured worker. And of course, the restrictions are going to come from the doctor, just so you know. Supervisor should check periodically on the injured worker. I would say more than periodic, I would say regularly. And I would do that again, make sure that they know you care about them, make sure they know you want them back to work. The injured worker management, the goals there is it's therapeutic for the employee. It maintains a feeling of self-worth. Nobody wants to feel like they don't have a purpose. The next one I think is kind of funny, but it's true. Prevents disability mentality. Some people, when they decide that they're disabled, they don't do anything. And, but if you stay mentally tough, you can continue to do the things that you do every day. I think that's much more important than you would think. The fourth one, maintains management employee relationship. That's huge. As long as the employee continues to feel like they're a part of the organization, they're much less likely to want to withdraw and want to seek out an attorney or a hearing or whatever. They want to stay a part of the organization and get back to work to their friends and to their acquaintances. And if you stay in touch with them, it reduces the difficulty of getting them back to work. And last, and probably not least, it reduces litigation and fraud. All those things are huge and make a big difference in how far the claim goes as far as indemnity or medical only, and how much it's actually ultimately going to cost the organization. And this is again, I think the be all end all. Accidents will happen. The exposures exist. Our challenge is to learn from the worker injury and increase the presence of defenses to decrease the potential of future injury. We can't stop accidents. They're going to take place. But there are things we can do to lessen them and to decrease the number of accidents that we have. And, it's always important to continually evaluate and assess and then reassess and then make changes as necessary, because it's an ongoing process. You're never going to be there. And, my experience in my 21 years tells me that just when an organization thinks they're there, then that's when the claims happen. It always is an ongoing process. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any that you have at this time. Just so you have my information, it's there on the screen. You can reach out to me at any time. I've got about 21 years of experience in working with home care, home health care. I've seen just about every injury you can imagine when it comes to these organizations. that concludes our webinar. And if you, again, if you want to have any questions that come up in the future, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to answer anything that I can. Thank you so much for your time and attendance. Have a great afternoon.